Hi, I'm Reverend Stuart Pirelli, and you have just entered Can We Have a Conversation? Today, our topic is Black Fathers for Social Justice. We will have 5 panelists that we will be discussing some items about Black fathers and the judicial system. And before we have these guests come on, I would like to show you a brief video of something that I think would enhance this conversation. And after the video, we'll come back and I'll introduce you to my guests.
And for what? For doing what I'm supposed to do. From strangers. Strangers who don't know. When my son was born, I only got him from 12 noon on Saturdays to 5 p.m. on Sundays, went to the court to get more time, came back with 12 noon on Saturdays to 5 p.m. on Sundays, plus child support, fought for a year, had him for a year and a half, if not more, had him 50% of the time, if not more, only to lose him when he started school to summertime and rotating holidays. And I know everything in this world doesn't go the way we plan. I can accept that. All that's fine. I just don't understand how a man can be forced to pay half of daycare, half of medical expenses, food, clothes, water, but the same man that laid down to create that child is not automatically given half of the time. Something about that situation is not right. And when I'm done with this poem, I mean this. I don't care if any of you clap. I just want my praise, my kudos, my air, my earth, my water, my drive, my moon, my sun, my baby, my motivation, my son. I just want my chance. I just want my son, Justice Prentice Powell. I want my baby back.
Today we hear a lot of negativity about African American men and their roles as committed fathers. And based on the propaganda that we are exposed to, the media, it gives us an opportunity to think that most people, not us, but most people would think that black men are deadbeat dads. They would think that they are not concerned about taking care of their children. And I would say that that's not true. I would say that that is something of a method designed to stereotype black men and to give them the efforts to deprive us from our equal rights, as it is concerning us spending more time with our children. And so I'm your host today, Stuart Pirelli, and you're watching Can We Have a Conversation? Today's topic is Black Men for Social Justice. Now this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. We're talking about black men having the desire to spend time with their children. But because of a system that was designed in 1950 that exists today, there is bias, there's prejudice, and there is discrimination in the judicial system. Now, many of the times, I would say that decisions are made slanted in the woman's favor. And we as men have to pay more child support, but the problem is we get less time. And so today, I just like to have a panel discussion. And with you all, I appreciate you coming. We have 5 panelists, and I'm just going to introduce them from my right to my left. And then as I finish the last introduction, I just ask that, oh, well, let's just do it like this. I'll just say, Carrie Ross, welcome to the show. Could you just give maybe 30 seconds to a minute of who you are, what you do, and what you think about the show, or why are you here?
My name is Carrie Ross. Delighted to be here, honored that I could be a part of this very important discussion about fathers and our abilities and concerns in raising our children. Being a father of 4, grandfather of 1 with an additional grandson on the way, a daughter who's been married for the last 8 years, it is truly a needed conversation. Having been in business for 30 years as a regional leader in a large healthcare organization, I see a lot of the symptoms that impact children as they have lack of fathers in their lives. So I see the structures that we build that have a main component that is missing most of the time, and that is quality time with a father. And it doesn't mean that you just have time on the books with a court order. Fatherhood is much deeper than that. there's a transfer of knowledge and wisdom and things that children need every day for self-esteem. So it's beyond a simple order. And these are desires of fathers who are willing to step up. And so I'm part of that conversation, and I'm glad to be here.
Amen. Welcome to the show. And our second guest is Galen Logan. Welcome to the show. Could you just give a small, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, summary of who you are and what you do and why you're here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me on board with this extremely important topic. First and foremost, I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. And those are two titles that I wear with the most pride. I'm also the founder and director of a nonprofit agency here in the San Francisco Bay Area called Village Connect. And I've been engaged in this work, working with children, youth, and families most of my life. Also, another title that I wear is son. And much of my work that I've done over the years and much of my experience and my lenses that I can see has been influenced by that title called son. And as being a son in my experiences, not only in my own household and with my family, but also in society, as being a young African-American male. And I'm here because I just want to share my experiences, but also I share my point of view in the work that I do in working with young men and with fathers.
Well, you're doing a great job, man.
Thank you.
And keep working in the community.
Yes, sir.
And our next guest to my left is the Reverend Frank Smith. And so welcome to the show, Reverend Smith. And I pray that you have something to bring into this conversation. I'm sure you will. Could you just give us 30 seconds to a minute of just who you are and what you do?
Sure. First of all, we want to thank you, and I want to thank the rest of the brothers on the staff here. And it's an honor. Amen. It's an honor to be on the side of the fence. Haven't always been here.
Right.
I grew up without a father, but I'm blessed to be a single dad at this moment. I'm encouraged by my 6-year-old son and my 8-year-old daughter. I have 2 other daughters, 30 and 20. So it's been a blessing, man, to walk this walk and know and hear that sound, Daddy. Amen. Ain't nothing like hearing that word, yes, Daddy. Sir. I'm also the CEO of Dad's Club International, and that's keeping the kid inside of us alive. A lot of times we go to work, we spend 10, 14 hours working, we come home, we tired, but we still have to remember our presence in our children's life. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And our next guest is a longtime friend from childhood. He has worked with the court systems and also had, some experiences with his own children, and I thought that would be important. And so I was wondering, his name is Corey Jeffries. Could you just share some of the things that you want to share here and who you are and where you come from?
Yes, well, also I'd like to say thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here on your show and to sit with these gentlemen here. I'm looking forward to learning something from this exchange and going forward. Your voices too and talk about it. Yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to the things that are going to make a difference in our community. I've worked in the judicial system, retired as a member of the California Court Association after nearly 20 years. I've worked in criminal, small claims, judicial facilities, probate, court operations, the whole 9 yards, all the way down to fiscal planning and things of that nature. I've started an organization now called the Jeffries Peace Project, and you as my little brother can understand that we were raised at a time where we had both parents in the neighborhood, and I guess as we talk, we can talk about some of the systematic things that have been made by design to separate the black family. And my program, again, the Jeffries Peace Project, is a program that helps men and women formerly incarcerated find jobs and housing. And I also have a company called Kugelma Publishing, One Media Networks. We do documentaries and film works. We mobilize and we reach out to other nonprofits in the community to enlighten and come up with the concept of how we can recirculate our dollars in our community, because there's a lot of things that start with the power of money in our communities, and how we're separated from that is very important.
Well, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And our last guest is Andre Atkins. And would you be able to just give us 30 seconds to a minute who you are, where you come from, and what do you want to do or why you're here today?
Sure. Again, my name is, well, first of all, thank you and thank everybody for being here. My name is Andre Atkins. I am the operations manager over at Alive and Free Omega Boys Club, Street Soldiers. And I am also a father. Mm-hmm. I've worked with children for over 25 years of my life. And so seeing the impact of what not having a father plays in their lives and what it takes in order to nurture them into a healthy place gives me a certain lens. And it's funny because my love is to do the work, but I don't love the work that I do because I'm doing a job that should be done in the right order of things. And so I'm here so that hopefully I can impart and I can share some of my experiences, some of my views, but also learn. Because as a father, I don't know everything. And so getting a perspective on how to do that, what I call the most important job on the planet, better is what I seek to do every day. And at the same time, I want to try to impart that with somebody else. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here and to be part of the conversation.
Well, I'm glad you're here as well. I've spoken to all of you individually, and each one of you had a passion to come on this show and talk. I'm the host of the show. I'm Stuart Pirelli, Reverend Stuart. I am also a father. I have a daughter, 28 years old. I'm a single father, that kids that live with me. I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. And I know the importance of a father in the house. I know the struggle, the fight for that. That wasn't given to me. That wasn't something that was just handed to me. That was a battle. And it should not have to be a battle, but it is. And so I know each one of you, I've talked to you, you shared briefly about, some of the things that you dealt with. And so we're just going to dive right into the conversation and begin to just have a dialogue. Is that all right?
That's all right.
Okay. So the first question I have is, and we'll go back and forth and, just be conscious of giving each other the time so we can be mindful of the time that we have, is the court's perception of a black man. What would you say the court's perception of a black man is?
When I think about that question, I must reflect on my own experiences as a father in the court system, just to establish parental rights that were initially taken from me. Mm-hmm. Not because I had done anything wrong, it's because the court process is based on a petitioner writing information about their views of a person, and then a respondent mm-hmm. coming in to reply to those statements. And I think even before that happens, there's a general perception mm-hmm. of African American men in the judicial system as not having the same credibility as our counterparts who are more Caucasian. And so we start out, if you will, at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And that requires some real thought. It requires resources. It requires one to step back from the initial anger of having those rights taken from you. When you know within yourself you're trying to do everything for your children, and it requires you to really seek counsel of those who've been through the process to understand what is it about the perception of us in the court system that puts us at such a disadvantage. As an example, most black fathers in the court system have proportionately less time with their children, not because they're not willing to be with their children, it's because the courts make them jump through hoops to prove that they can be the fathers that many of them were already before the courts intervened. And so fathers have busy lives, they're trying to provide, they're trying themselves to elevate generations to another level of living through teaching and mentoring and loving. And so those challenges are great for African American men. And so when we enter into the judicial system, we have to spend a lot of time just establishing real credibility that we're fathers. I've been in corporate for 30 years. Went to Stanford, got executive education, entrepreneur, run businesses, but it seems as if when I entered into this system, I had to basically establish my brand to strangers. Explain to them that I've never not been there for my children. I pulled them from the womb. I've never missed a first thing in their life. So I love them. It's not an artificial love because now the courts are involved in this situation. And so it puts us in a position to have to explain some of the basic needs of our children when our children need us, and that need is real. And so for me, that perception has so many levels of inaccuracies. And it requires some serious thought. It requires conversations like these, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. So I'm looking forward to learning more about other men's experience with the perceptions and their interactions with our judicial system.
That's good. You know, I want to just touch on that because the video that we had seen prior to this, I saw that there was feedback from other people, particularly talking about this guy and saying that he, if he would have done what he was supposed to do, that wouldn't have happened. And I laughed at that statement because I, like you, I was there when my children was born. I mean, I changed the diapers. I stayed up at night. So I understand. So it's not what you did that was wrong. It's just that you didn't have a fair shake at taking care of who's yours. And as the guy said, you know, you cannot lie down with a woman. A woman can't have a baby by herself. It takes two people. So why don't they share that responsibility? So what do you think about the perception, Gail? What is your thoughts on that as far as the court's perception of a black man?
Oh, wow. Well, I just had to tag along with what my man here said. And I think I'll be redundant in saying some of the same things, but I will shine a light on the media and how we've been socialized over the years. And not only, you know, I had shifted from the place of how the court sees us, but how we see us and how we see ourselves, because a lot of times we will put ourselves in a position that is not going to serve us well. And it's not taking away the responsibility of the system or the court system and saying that what they do is right, but also in us understanding what the game is. Right. And learning that if it is this way, then there's a certain way that I need to shift and make adjustments to make sure that I continue to have favor when it comes to seeking the outcomes that I'm looking for in the lives of my children.
I think that's a valid point, and you made a good point. And this is a thing that we as men have the responsibility to do, and that is to understand our rights, understand the legal system. Because if you don't know the legal system, there are documentations and paperwork that needs to be submitted, and if you don't submit that in the time, it's just like you never stepped foot in that courtroom. And so we have to know our rights. We have to know what we're entitled to. Yes, we're getting the short end of the stick, and a lot of times we fight the system, even though the game keeps changing. The rules keep changing. Now they have rules, but they don't always abide by the rules. But we still need to know what the rules are so that we can respond, you know, accurate to those rules and according. What do you think about that, Frank?
You just brought up to mind that scripture, my people perish from the lack of knowledge.
That's right.
And one of the things that Brother Galen hitchhiked on was the game that's being played. And we need to start looking through different lenses. When I go out in the community, again, I'm a single dad, 6-year-old son, 8-year-old daughter who lives with me. But most of the time when I'm out in the community and I'm going places and I'm picking up my children, I see other black men picking up their children. When I go out in places, I'm in restaurants and whatnot, I see black men attaining to their children. I see other cultures, they usually let the women do it. So it's very important that we as kings understand what our presence brings. Also, when we talked about the game, we talked about the court system, I don't know if the brothers know this, but I'm currently This is how I found out. Currently going through a divorce. And got all the paperwork signed, got everything going, and we're doing this the right way. But then they told me, but wait a minute, because you wasn't married when Fantastic was born, you have to send your wife a piece of form, and she writes it and signs it and states that you are the father. Now granted, I have a birth certificate, I was there, the name's on there and everything, but because I wasn't married, that's that hitchhike loophole that they have, because they say when the child is born, hear me now, 99.9% of that child belongs to the young lady.
Really?
Yes. So that was a bit of information that I learned. I'm like, wow. Okay. So again, we need to know all the facts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Corey, you know probably the judicial system better than we all. And because you've experienced, I'm sure you've seen a lot of things in and out the courtroom. What is your response on this?
Well, as a father of 3 grown sons with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, stepkids, you know, it's all one village. Any stepchild to me is an extension of my family. And of course, we have to look at the fact that if we don't know where we've been, we will never know where we're going. And there are systematic things in place in the judicial system. I've worked in child protective services, foster care, juvenile, the juvenile system. There are things in position. The young man next to me talked about having a birth certificate. That's basically designed so if the mother of that child has to seek government assistance, that gives them somebody to go after to get those funds back. But in light of that, if you haven't been married and you are seeking joint custody, like this man said, you have to prove that you're the father by acquittal through the mother. Right. And these systematic things that are in place are discussed on the Senate floor, locally, regionally, and these things are all part of this collective system that employs black men through the prison industrial complex. Brother Atkins and I are grassroots guys, and we look at systematic things that provide knowledge for children growing up, so you'll know exactly how important an education is. There's a shortage of black men, not in the black colleges. There are black women and black men at the black colleges, but the media puts it out there that there's not enough good black men. There are black men that are coming out of the education system. We're taught to go get an education so you can go get a job, as opposed to starting your own brand. We have to think in terms of ways of circulating our dollars where we can control our circumstances within the community. We can put people in power in places that best serve what our needs are to change this dynamic system that we call the American justice system, that is not really serving our communities, especially when it comes to police reform and other things, just going to and from your house and to your job. We've seen pro athletes, entertainers, public officials, police that are off duty being treated like third world citizens, for a lack of a better word, just because of their color, without even knowing this guy that you're arresting is a police officer. He's out of uniform. He's a blackface again to you now. You know, but there are systematic things that we can educate ourselves on by aligning ourselves with people that advocate for us, like Umar Johnson and others alike, who are putting things out on YouTube. You can Google almost anything in there, and it will give you statistics on incarceration and all these other different dynamics. So that's what it's going to take, is for us re-educating ourselves and finding a way to collectively bring that village back together. You know, like I said, we were raised with both parents in our neighborhood. My father was one of the first African-American cops in Oakland, and he couldn't stand cops because on the inside, he was the N-word, but out there in the street, he's part of that blue fraternity, you know, and the injustices that they want you to participate in under the color of authority is still outrageous. Oakland's gone through its third chief of police since June 9th.
Right.
So we have systematic issues that we need to address.
And I had a conversation with you, Andre, and maybe you can share a little bit. What do you think the perception of the court is of a black person?
Well, I think all the brothers here articulated what that looked like. I'm going to use a little bit of my personal story. When I went into, I was the petitioner because of the situation between my daughter's mom and I. And so I'm sitting there and they act like they had to come find me in North Dakota hiding out in the cave someplace. I mean, even though I was the one who brought the case, they didn't know me from a can of paint or her from a can of paint. I was automatically assumed to be the bad guy and treated as such, when the first thing I was just trying to do was establish a line of paternity so that I can protect my rights as a parent, because she has made statements in emails, verbally, text messages, that I would never see my daughter, have a relationship with my daughter, and she was going to drive the narrative about what transpired between she and I. And I brought all of that to court. They never even looked at it. And so their assumption was, you are the bad guy, you probably are no good, you probably tricked her, you probably ran off on her, and you're probably trying to find some kind of weird way to get out of your responsibility. You just a shuck and jive clown. And I'm sitting there with my face blown open like, you don't even know my name. I don't have a criminal past. I'm not a felon. I've never been accused of beating a child or rape or anything like that, but you put me in this category where they need protection from me? So to answer your question directly, I felt as though I was treated like a piece of garbage by the court system, and that, again, I had to prove that I'm even worth sitting in the courtroom by showing up all the time, by making sure that I fill out the proper documents, by getting the DNA test. And even then, they didn't know anything about me, but I had to have supervised visitations.
And you're the petitioner.
And I'm the petitioner. I'm the one who's coming saying, I want to find out if this is my daughter so that I can have a relationship with her. And they were like, well, you can have 2-hour visitations once a week, and somebody has to be present at the time. And you can't leave, you can't go outside, you cannot go for a walk, you cannot, none of the things that I was able to do with my sons, who was by a different person, a different woman that I was married to, none of the things I got to experience in their development, I got to experience for just about the first year of my daughter's life. And so, to like I said, to put it bluntly, I think we're looked at as a low life form on earth with little expectation that we're there to do nothing but get out of the responsibility that we don't want to care for our children.
I think a lot of times, because of what has happened in the past with some other guys, that they put us in that category, and that they say all black men are like this person. And before they can even take the time to get to know you, or even read your documentation that you submit to the courts. Right. You know, because a lot of that information is there if they take the time to read it. But the truth of the matter is they don't read it. And so they say, you know, that it's fair, they're not biased, it's not prejudiced, but I don't know about your experience, but my experience has been very biased, very prejudiced, and discriminating.
Well, you know, the court is an assembly line. We've got cases to clear. We know what this guy's done, and as far as we're concerned, next. Okay, here's another guy. We don't need to hear your story. Next, just this template of paperwork that's stamped and sent, that all goes the same direction, regardless of what your story is, is how this system is designed. Your chances of getting a relationship, unless you're married and in the house with your child's mother, your chances of having an established relationship with your child, you could have robbed a bank or done any of those things. When you're in prison, You simply fill out a petition, and you are allowed, upon your release date, a mediator will bring that child to see you. You get better rights with your child as a prisoner than you do being a free man outside when you're separated from your woman. And that all goes to play and bring to bear about what the real design is separating the black family. There's a lot of jobs for us out there. If you're in the prison industrial complex, you can help manufacture license plates and clothing and all types of goods and things like that. So the U.S. looks good by not outsourcing. These companies now don't get blown under the mat for being stamped made in Korea. They could go, oh no, we hire here. You guys made $1 billion and you didn't meet your projections. Why are you laying off so many people? Well, it's because we got people in the prisons working for us now.
And the majority of them look like who?
Look like us.
That's us.
And that's the design,
That's us.
though. That's the design.
And that is the design, and that's why I made that statement, is because, yes, we don't like the way it is, and sure, we could run away from our responsibilities and just say, you know what, I fought, I did what I could. You know, a lot of people don't even think, men don't even think that they can even have equal rights.
And that's design.
And that's design.
And again, it's that divide and conquer. Because we have been taught that we get angry, okay? So they depend on our anger. They send us through all these loopholes, all these things that make you feel like, come on now, but man, why I gotta keep, why I gotta go through this? This person don't go through this. And it's not fair, it's not equal. But it's already designed for us to fail through our emotions. Like you said earlier in the show that you invited a lot of people to come. And we're just gonna be honest. One of the things is, there's so much that we have to come through. And if you don't know, when we said this earlier, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know that you're a king, and you don't know that you're strong, they have so many traps out there for you to fail. And if you fail and you have a young son in the household, hello somebody, then there's a good opportunity and a chance for him to fail. And that's how the system continues to stay overcrowded with us.
It's funny because, and Kerry, I want to ask you, because I know, your story, and I know how, you've had to go through certain things, but you had to maintain your composure, because if you would act outside of character, they would send you to anger management. And they said before you can spend time with your child, you're going to have to go to 52 weeks of anger management. And then we may give you visitation rights. Yeah, and you got to pay for that. So, I mean, what is your, what does it mean when it says the respondent factor?
So to me, my personal experience with that respondent factor involved being described as a person who was angry, being described by a petitioner, my children's mother who filed for the divorce, described me to the courts in a way that would give her an advantage, including a temporary restraining order. Mind you, I come home from work, been taking care of my family their entire life, have never cheated on my wife, never beat my wife, never done anything to deserve the type of reaction that I experienced in the court system. And when I first approached the court system, I was at such a disadvantage that the attorney that I had at the time, he apologized on behalf of the court. He said to me, he said, Mr. Ross, number one, you're going to get your custody with your children. He said, I want to apologize on behalf of how this process started. He looked at the paperwork that they had filed and looked at what I brought in to just respond to it. Not even having time to prepare, it was just who I am as a dad. I didn't need to go get an entourage to describe my role as a father. I've been there their entire life. I provided for my family for 7 years when my wife stayed home and then kept enjoying success because I'm a committed hard worker and earner for my family. Never had to come look for me to take care of those type of responsibilities. So when this process started, I had to literally have representation. See, I think many of us experience the court systems when we walk in and try to represent ourselves because of, this is a surprise. You don't have resources to deal with this court system. Most attorneys in the Bay Area charge up to $380 an hour just to represent you. And if you don't have those type of resources, you're forced to try to represent yourself.
Plus the retainer.
Right.
And I just want to add, you don't know the depth
of what you're stepping into.
Right.
Because you're thinking when you walk in, you're going to tell your side, she's telling her
And
side.
there's gonna be
and
some
you got a
truth
balanced
and-
chance.
right.
It ain't, but you
Very
find
different.
out very quickly
Very
that it is not like that. You know, you don't know that
your feet over the
right.
pole.
You know, you don't realize that that rabbit hole has no bottom in it when you walk over in there. And I know what it was for me. Like I said, I'm sitting there and the judge raising her voice, and I haven't even said a word. And so I said, I better give me an attorney as fast as I can. Let me save and let me do what I got to do. Because I saw the writing on the wall after that first hearing. And like I said, I was the petitioner. I had all the documents that showed what she said she was going to do, what she planned going to do. The judge never read it. They read her stuff, never read mine. So when I walked out the door, I was scratching my head like, now, what just happened? What in the universe just happened? And I had no explanation because there is none. There is none.
The sad part about it is when you have both representation and you can't get along, the sad part is the two people who's representing each other have better communication than you and the other person. So they already know what they're going to do, and they're already getting paid. And at the end of the day, they close their briefcases, go home, and you still got to raise those children.
That assembly line again.
You see what I'm saying?
They come together, let's get this paperwork done so we don't have to string this along. He doesn't have that much money. I know how her situation is. We tapped into all this. Let's keep this moving and hope the best thing comes out of it. It's a real interesting thing. And what you're advocating for down the road, we might want to consider doing it like we do at the circuit court level. When you go for child custody hearings and things, maybe there should be more than one judge. Maybe there should be a male judge and a female judge. They're supposed to go in with an honest perspective. But the two stories I've heard where it's a female judge, and not to knock female judges at all, well, as we get ready to maybe have a female president, which has probably been needed after all the testosterone between the Bushes and everybody else. But my point is, maybe we should consider having a male and a female in there for these hearings, because there is two sides to every story, and the best way to represent it is to have a two-sided coin making the ultimate decision, even though there are still other systematic things that have to be rooted up.
I want to speak out of the box of the scope of where we at right now in terms of the system, because we live in a society that has multiple systems that we have to contend with. And so we got the economic system, we got the educational system. Of course, we're talking about family law in the courts, criminal justice, civil, social services. And so, the thing about it is that each of those systems that exist in this United States of America, are in party to one another in terms of a purpose.
Right.
And so I believe, and I've always believed, and I've engaged in many discussions and dialogue with folks around the fact that we live in a controlled environment. And there's nothing that we see that exists in terms of conditions and otherwise that's by accident.
That's right.
So let's just keep it real.
Right.
Let's just say it and call it like it is. The big thing for me and the work that I've been doing over the years is just really looking at breaking those systems down to the if degree, if I can say, and that is the system itself. And what is it that within the system itself that prevents me from being able to walk out, be able to intelligently view and see what the environment looks like, and then make the proper adjustments that I need to make in order to get the outcomes that I'm looking for. But taking that to another level, which is the family system. And so, of course, we know our families have been obliterated. So we don't have a whole lot of good stories to tell when it comes to black families. And I'm sorry, a lot of folks will jump up and say, well, there are good families out there and media is overplaying that. I don't believe that. That's a lie, because I know everybody I know somebody that's been locked up, that's on drugs and otherwise. And most families are fragmented.
Absolutely.
So how do we begin to understand the system, but also begin to shift our focus inward and say, where's our power, our real power lies? And then, of course, I would say this, and it may not be popular, and not let religion sidetrack us. because I believe religion has a way of dividing us in many, many different ways. And so we just really have to be careful of those divisions that occur, especially when we talk about black people. In a lot of cases, we speak on black issues like we need to apologize when we talk about black people. You know, we're doing this for black people, but I'm sorry, we need to look at everybody and be open to addressing everybody. Why? When we have other groups in this society that don't do that, but yet we don't hold them accountable for looking out for the whole of the people. And I'm just say this last point and be quiet. You know, one of the things that I see and have seen for years, and it really began a part of my waking up process, is that we have a lot of success stories as individuals in this society. Individuals can succeed, we can get in the door, we'll be accepted and embraced. But when you start talking about, I want to bring everybody, I want to bring the whole family, I want to bring the whole community, oh, no, that's not going to happen. And so we get into this mode where subconsciously, they call it what, crabs in a bucket? We begin to distrust each other, we begin to play against each other, as opposed to looking at that whole aspect of, look, I know I can get some things done, but I know together, me and this man, me and these brothers, we can do a whole lot more and go a whole lot further.
Well, you know, and I hear you as far as the children and how that is playing a role. I would say, as you said earlier about the village and raising a child in the village, and I know you said the religion, and you know, I'm a man of God, and I'm a reverend, I'm ordained, but that does not say that I'm put so much religion. I'm not saying that you said this, but I'm saying to the point that I can't see what's in front of me. Now, I know my relationship with God, and I know where He has me, but I still have my part to play as a father. And so the organizations that we all run, we run for a reason. You know, I run a program called Man to Man. The reason I run it is because there's so many young men running around that doesn't have a father. And doesn't know. As a result, they're caught up in the system. And they're caught up in the system where they don't even know their own identity. And so because they don't know their identity, the streets give them their identity. Where the father should be in the house giving them their identity. But a lot of times the father is not allowed in the house because the mom is angry at the father because of what has happened between them and will block the relationship with the child. So it's not so much that the father gets it all. Who? Children. The children. That's what I want to talk about, the children. What happens to the children in this situation?
You know what else, Stuart? You talked about the 50s and how there's a movie called Claudine. Remember that movie?
Watch out now.
Now, it was okay to get this government check, long as there's not a black man in that house.
That was the setup. That's right.
Yeah, as long as there's not a black man in that house, you know, you could have another kid. You know,
have many kids.
Yeah, as long as there's not a black man in that house. The minute we find out that there's a new iron on the ironing board, there's a new toaster oven, you know, we got to start subtracting stuff. You know, we got to keep you under
the radar.
You know,
making sure that you don't make a certain amount, because if you do, then we have to cut you off.
Yeah, and that is a systematic thing that's in print, that's got a government seal on it, that we can't refute unless we go to city council meetings. We hold our politicians, you know, to the fire. This whole thing about Democrats and Republicans, everything that Barack Obama had to redo the first 4 years in office, and then the things that the GOP fought him on the second tier, is subject to go completely the other direction, depending upon who's in office. We have to look at it like there's a cruise ship that's already manifested. It's going from point A to point B. Who's going to be the admiral of the ship? One's got a bunch of smiles for you, and it looks good, and the other one's throwing people off. But either way, the ship's already sailing in a certain direction. So that system, that manifest needs to be changed. Everything that we're talking about here needs to be changed.
Frank, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it was so funny that he brought up Claudine. As Mr. Galen Logan know, that's one of my pet peeves is that movie, because that was the beginning of the message. They always give us subliminal messages in movies. We just didn't catch it.
Right.
See, in the 1st and the 15th, boy, folks used to stay home and just wait on that check. But all them other days that they were staying home and not going out and getting employment and not furthering themselves was the setup for what's happening right now. But I want to switch to when you talked about the children and what's happening with the children when we, as parents, I always say my children didn't ask to come here.
That's right. That's mine.
That was something me and their mother decided to do.
That's right.
You know, so I first of all owe them the respect of not dissing their mother in front of them. I might get on the phone and vent with one of my brothers or whatnot, but they will be nowhere around. And there's too many times we've heard, you mind me of your daddy, you mind me, he no good, woo, 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 woo.
You're going to be just
okay? Yeah, come on now. So it's very important, and I can speak personally, and I hate to keep calling on this brother, but if y'all haven't noticed, that's my guy there, Mr. Galen Logan. We work together and been really fellowshipping these last 4 years together. And he's watched me. And one of the things that I made sure in this separation with my wife and my other daughter, I have 2 of them with me and she has 1. I made sure that they didn't feel like it was something they did wrong.
That's very important.
That is very important.
It was very important from the gate. And then one day my son, 6 years old, and at the time he was 5, he told me on Friday night movie night, here it is. He said, Dad, we need to talk. And in his voice, the structure of him, you know, delegating that to me, that there was some seriousness coming out of this young man's voice. So I gathered up, I sat up like I was, you know, I sat up straight. Yes.
And he the father.
And I said, yes. And he said, Dad, I've been having secrets, but I need some things I need answered. And I'm blown away by it, and I'm not adding nothing to this. And he said, whose decision was it between you and Mom for you guys to separate?
6 years old.
5 at the time.
5. Okay.
So I said, well, son, I'm not going to lie to you. Mom had some things she wanted to see in life, and it didn't take away anything. She still loves you. He said, well, Dad, how can a mom leave her family? He said, I love everyone, and I would never leave my family. Now, this is things that's going on in his head. And so he said, now, I know my sister's going to be mad because I'm telling. He said, but Dad, we have secrets. So instead of me taking that time to go after the secrets, I say, well, baby, we're going to leave them alone. Now, I'm not acting like I got it all together, but my first and foremost thing in my heart was for them not to feel abandoned as much as I could nourish that and to make them feel loved still with the separation.
I think that's very important, and I want to just piggyback off that, because I actually told my son the same thing. Your mom and I, it's between your mom and I. You didn't do anything wrong. We just couldn't get along. You know, because they need to understand, because they will take that on as maybe the reason why Dad is no longer around is because of me. And so they begin to start feeding into that. And if they don't know who they are and they don't have a strong man in their life to give them that identity, you know, and to encourage them and tell them, no, it is not about you, which most don't, you know. And so for years they carry that, you know, for years they carry this, you know, if I didn't do this, maybe Mom and Dad would still be together, you know. And sometimes they get that guilt from the other party too, and they tell them certain things of you know, that they feel like they have to adopt, you know, as a part of who they are. And it's not a part of who they are. These children didn't come here. They didn't ask, and they didn't select you to be their father. They, you know, they didn't say, you know, I want, you know, him to be my dad. You know, they didn't have a choice. They just came here. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that they equip. And I as a father, it blows me away. And you, all of y'all met my son, but Andre and you, Frank. But what kills me is the fact that my son can go through the struggles of life and that I have to discipline him every day, and I still see how he's off course. And he's in my house and I'm disciplining him every day. What happens when he doesn't have a dad at all and he's fitting for himself?
Right. And it's funny, you keep bringing up that term we call in phenomenology, thrownness. What is that? That's the child's inability to select parents. But notice, as we're already here as parents now, we have genetic capabilities where you can design your child the way you want, and couples can get involved in some ways of creating things. But what it's speaking to is when children are in our lives, there's a level of sacrifice that one parent should make. Mm-hmm. And there are times when one parent may be better at it than the other, but when you go through a separation and the family is under attack, meaning the stability of the home, the ability for the children to interact with both parents, because that's needed. We're not advocating against mothers. We're just saying as fathers, we want to be a part of that. We want to raise our children. We're respectable men. We are looking to raise our children. We care about our legacy, and we want to do it from the cradle to the grave, whichever comes in the latter of the two. Mm-hmm. So it's like when you start on this journey of being a father, there are so many pitfalls we have in our community as African American men, because most of us don't have really good models of a successful family, let alone a successful father who was in the home teaching us how to deal with relationships, money, physical health. All of these things are pillars that make up a strong family. And so when we don't have that, we can start with big deficits as men when we now have families. Because it's more than just having a child. Any fool can go out and impregnate a woman and create a child. But it takes a real man to have the journey, the foresight, to see it through in spite of a difficult court system. So when you talk about the children, that's a loaded topic, because we're talking about future leaders who will inherit the earth that we live in now. And so it comes down to, what will they have as a result of our life's work? What are we willing to do to sacrifice, in spite of all the things we've been talking about, because they're all valid, and we all experience them in our own way. A court system that doesn't see us as equal parents when we're engaged in fighting for our parental rights. But beyond that, there's a child bearing our name. See, you talked about the woman having 99.9% of the custody upon birth. However, the bloodline of the father is in the child. The bloodline is designed by the father, and therefore the child bears the father's name. So there is a legacy that will be left. What will your legacy be in spite of those challenges? Because our forefathers dealt with that. They dealt with it, and many of them stepped up to the plate and decided. And it starts with the man in his mind. You know, there's a very short distance that kills many men, and it's about, we say it's about 18 inches from your head to your heart. We quit on this battlefield first, because when we deal with these difficult systems called the court, and maybe an angry woman who no longer wants to support that and nurture that relationship, if we don't keep the mentality that I'm not going to leave. You know, right now with my 3 sons, we play basketball year round, and so we have a little motto. We say, no matter how hard it gets, we will not quit. So we as fathers have to prepare that vision, and not only prepare it with words, we have to live it out. We have to show them what their teens are like, what their 20s are like, all the way through up close. And it's not just one part of that that's important. As a dad, you bring so much more than just income. And the courts will reduce you down to income if you allow it. If you allow it. Now, one of the things I have to say to dads, and I know many of us are accountable to our children, but as a whole, there has to be a shift in priorities. You know, I like nice cars, I like houses, all that stuff, but we can't sacrifice our children for the material things of this earth, because that stuff can be taken away in a moment. But your children will live on. So we put a lot of planning as an example. I don't know if many of you have checked these statistics, but Nevada and Hawaii are the largest marriage destinations in the United States. In 1990, Nevada had a 99 per 1,000 member marriage rate. Right now, it's about 31.9. That means 31.9 out of 1,000 people in that state are getting married now, compared to 99.
Those residents in the
Yes, of Nevada. Okay. Now, Hawaii is second, 17 out of 1,000 are getting married. What am I saying? We put a lot of emphasis in the day of the wedding, We put a lot into the destination, the honeymoon. We put a lot into the house that you're going to come back to. But we never talk about how we're going to parent, how we're going to actually raise these children. Who's going to provide? What's the plan for how we will accomplish our dreams as individuals and collectively as fathers and mothers in a family? And it's not just about us. So that means having input from the children. Many of us didn't have that modeled in our lives. So we struggle with it. We don't know what it means. It's not just about money. It's not just about wearing a suit and a tie. It's about nurturing our families. And some of us have to even nurture our wives. Some of them didn't get the father modeling. They didn't have the mothers teaching them how to be patient and set the atmosphere in the home. This is a loaded topic. So when it comes down to children, someone has to decide it's worth fighting for. They are worth the struggle so that they can have a better life. And that takes many shapes and forms. It may be a financial sacrifice needed in the moment. It may be a time sacrifice where you're needed to sort of put on hold the things that may be important to you for a period of time to ensure that the children have stability. Because our children, let's face it, we ourselves as men deal with identity crisis. Imagine the images that are coming to our children today through social media. Now they can just touch one click and the image is in their mind forever.
I want to interject something real quick, and I'm going to flow like water because you said a lot, my man. You said a lot. You said a lot.
Children and children.
You got me fired up with that one, and you know, I'm gonna just recite the hook of a song that was very popular not too many years ago. Rolling down the street, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice, laid back with my mind on my money and my money on my mind. Now, we could say that's a harmless hook on a song that we like to dance to and kick it with our boys and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is that in our homes, we used to instill principles. We used to instill purpose. And a lot of what you're saying that we need to have to be able to get this job done as a man has not been there. Has not been there. And so what happens is that society, going back to society and the system will interject its own principles and purpose. And so our children begin to take on that as this my sense of identity. This is what this is all about. So now it may not make a kid go out and run out and drink and smoke weed, but it may loosen, it may lighten that whole thing that maybe my mama was telling me not to do that and that wasn't cool. But the more and more I hear that, and the system is rampant and consistent, meaning it's over and over again. The messages don't stop; they keep coming. At Village Connect, we have what we call the 3 pillars of change: purpose, principles, and process. This is the beginning of a conversation with our boys and with our men. Because the minute you ask somebody, what's your purpose? Now, unless you just out there and you just totally sleep, most people are going to think about it before they open their mouth and answer that question. But that whatever that reply is says a lot about where you at.
That's right.
And so, you know, I'm going to just say this. I know I got so many things I want to say, but I want to keep putting the finger back on us, because I don't want to get too caught up in talking about the system and what they're doing and how they're doing it. Because that's just, to me, that's a very short conversation that we need to have, because we can see it. It's obvious, it's clear, it's plain. The big thing is, how do we begin to take on an accountability for others that don't belong to us? See, it's one thing for us to raise our children and to know that our kids are all right, but when we look out there and we see somebody else's kid that may not have it together, we don't have the luxury of just saying, that ain't my job, that ain't my responsibility, because we're going to suffer right along with everybody else if we don't take our time to do something about that child.
We are running real close to the end, and we're going to have to come back again. I already knew this was going to have to be a sequence of series of conversations. This is just the floor, the ground floor of many conversations. But because we have 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes left, real briefly, if you had an opportunity to say something to a single father today, what would it be? And we'll start with you and just go real quick.
I would say keep an open mind, commit to lifelong learning. Use your network that you have. Put energy into creating one, because you're going to need one as a father. Find a mentor, someone who has successfully raised a family or a child that you have a relationship with, or that you could perhaps develop a relationship with. Make sure that you have peers, parents that are dealing with the similar age that your child is, so that you can learn and have a partner to grow with and experience new ways of parenting that will make you more successful in that journey with your child. And to ask for help, to not be afraid to ask, how did you successfully raise this child? Because one of the things I've learned in our community is we suffer in meeting a lot of our goals because we don't have the social structures where we're sharing information about successes that could benefit other people. And as this brother pointed out, being willing to, accept responsibility for our community beyond our own children. So that single father, I would say, make sure you're networked in to a community bigger than just your family. Start there, of course, but make sure you're branching out and making relationships with people that can help advance that journey for you and your child.
Galen.
I would say to a single father, to a man, to a woman, I said to anybody, but in particular you said to single fathers, just by the fact that we are existing, by the mere fact that we are breathing in oxygen and that we have been put here, you are giving gifts to somebody. You're giving gifts to the rest of the world, to other people who come in contact with you. And I like to break it into 3 categories. What makes up all of us is good, bad, and ugly. Good is that pure essence. That's what we came into the world with, pure. It's what God put down in us to do what we're supposed to come here and do. Bad is faulty information. It's information that we gather over the years of going home, and our parents may have told us something or showed us something that wasn't necessarily right. Ugly is when we find out that it's bad and we keep using it anyway. And so one thing I'll say is that it's your job to do the introspection, to do that self-exploration, so that you can figure out what kind of gifts you're giving to your children. That work, because it's nonstop.
Frank.
Yeah, man, I look in the camera, straight in the camera, and tell the single dad, man, love the process. And understand you ain't got to have it perfect. And always respect the woman that gave birth to that child. I'll share.
Corey.
It hasn't spoken yet, but if I was a ventriloquist dummy, you guys would have had your arms up my back, because I mirror every message that these brothers have said, and I know he's going to say. Also, it's good as a single parent, you take your son to the game and do those things. Sit down and talk to that child. Find out what his interests are, and seek more education and more knowledge for yourself as far as knowing where your family history, where you as an individual came from, so you can impart that to that child in that conversation. He's got, the full attention. You've got his full attention. Your child is waiting to hear what you have to say.
Andre.
Don't check out. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be some challenges. There may be even some self-created issues. And it may seem like everything and everyone is against you. But you got the most important job in the world. And it don't matter what they say about you. Don't matter what she do to you. Don't matter what they do to you. It don't matter. All that stuff don't matter. What matters is your relationship with your child and what you putting into your child. Without you, it's going to be a very, very tough road for that child. And so I'm echoing what everybody else said, but we have to stay engaged no matter what we got to go through. And it will be tough. It will be uphill. But the rewards is when we can kick back as a grandfather and see our children doing it right.
Well, I would say that if you are struggling as a father with with an issue with support, or your own issues where you need to get some advice about filing paperwork, there is a site on the internet called www.fathersrightsinc.com. And it gives you a lot of resources on how to prepare for a case, how to prepare for going to court, what to know, because a lot of the things that you've all said is we didn't come here with this knowledge. I don't know if any of you have purchased the book on how to raise a child. But there is no book. There's no manual to that. And so we have to hit and miss and do the best that we can. You know, ask God to give us guidance and instruction, but we got to be in their face. We got to get to know them. We have all the things that you guys said. So I'm asking, can we have another conversation about this issue soon?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not talking about in 3-4 months. I'm talking about we need to continue to keep the dialogue, the conversation, and hopefully we can all come together and make a change in somebody's life. You have been watching Can We Have a Conversation? I can't wait to see you on the next recording. Blessings to you.